Isha tugged nervously at the hem of her simple cotton dress as she stood outside the gleaming glass doors of Vogue Luminescence, Mumbai's most prestigious fashion house. At 34, she felt both too old and too unpolished for this world of cutting-edge glamour, but her portfolio, filled with intricate designs inspired by traditional Indian textiles, had somehow earned her an interview with Samira Kapoor, the notoriously demanding creative director. "You're 10 minutes early," noted the receptionist, a woman with impossibly straight hair and winged eyeliner sharp enough to cut glass. Her gaze swept over Isha's modest attire, lingering disapprovingly on her worn leather handbag. Ms. Kapoor despises eagerness almost as much as she hates provincial aesthetics. Isha swallowed hard. "I can wait." "In the corner, please, away from the display items." The atrium buzzed with beautiful people in expensive clothes, their voices a symphony of practiced nonchalance. Models, designers, and executives glided across the marble floor like exotic fish in a pristine aquarium. Isha, with her practical flats and minimal makeup, was a sparrow among peacocks. At precisely 10:00 a.m., a tall woman in a structured white blazer and black cigarette pants emerged from the elevator. Samira Kapoor moved like a weapon, all precise angles and deliberate motion. Her assistants fluttered around her like anxious moths. "That's her," whispered a young man organizing fabric swatches nearby, "the Ice Queen herself." Samira's cold gaze swept the room and landed on Isha. Something flickered in her eyes, recognition perhaps, though Isha was certain they'd never met. The fashion mogul's perfect lips curved into what might have been a smile. "You must be our rural talent," Samira said loudly enough for everyone to hear. The room fell silent. "I'm expecting great things, perhaps a collection inspired by, what is it you people wear in the villages, potato sacks?" Titters of laughter rippled through the atrium. Isha's cheeks burned. "Actually, I specialize in contemporary interpretations of traditional handloom techniques," she managed to say, her voice steadier than she felt. Samira's eyebrow arched. "Fascinating. I'm sure the world is breathlessly awaiting more ethnic kitsch. Come along." Following Samira into the main studio was like entering a battlefield unprepared. Designers huddled over drafting tables, their eyes darting nervously whenever Samira approached. The walls were adorned with photographs of models wearing Vogue Luminescence's signature minimalist designs, all sharp lines and monochromatic elegance. "Everyone," Samira announced, "meet our new experiment." Isha believes her little handicrafts deserve a place alongside real fashion. A man with carefully tousled hair and a bespoke suit stepped forward. Neil Malhotra, lead designer, he introduced himself with practiced charm, though his eyes held nothing but contempt. "We've been told to accommodate your perspective." "How generous of you all," Isha replied, struggling to maintain her dignity. She pulled her portfolio from her bag, hand-bound in silk she had dyed herself. Samira snatched it and flipped through it carelessly. "Quaint," she declared, tossing it onto a nearby table where coffee spilled across Isha's carefully rendered sketches. "Oh dear, how clumsy of me." As Isha rushed to save her work, Samira addressed the room. "This, darlings, is what happens when we lower our standards in the name of diversity." She pronounced the last word as if it were a disease. "Ms. Mehta will be joining our design team as part of the board's misguided inclusion initiative." The humiliation was complete. Isha stood there, soaked sketches in hand, as the entire room stared at her with a mixture of pity and disdain. What they didn't know, what Samira herself appeared to have forgotten, was that Isha was not simply a rural talent with handicraft skills, and this was not their first encounter. 15 years earlier, Isha Raj, as she was known then, had been the star pupil at the National Institute of Fashion Technology. Her final collection, a revolutionary fusion of traditional handloom techniques with avant-garde silhouettes, had earned her the prestigious Emerging Designer Award and a coveted apprenticeship with Vogue Luminescence, then a fledgling brand with massive potential. "You have vision," Ronit Sharma, the founder and original creative director, had told her. "Your work honors tradition while boldly embracing the future." At 21, Isha had been on fire with ambition and creativity. Her days were spent developing new techniques to incorporate traditional embroidery into contemporary designs, her evenings sketching concepts that pushed boundaries while honoring heritage. Her closest friend in those days was Samira Kapoor, another apprentice with razor-sharp instincts for what would sell. While Asha focused on innovation and craftsmanship, Samira excelled at reading the market and building connections with the right people. "We're going to change fashion forever," Samira would say, arms draped around Asha's shoulders as they shared cheap wine in their tiny shared apartment. "You with your artistic genius, me with my business sense, will be unstoppable." Then came the night of the Vogue Luminescent Spring Showcase, where apprentices presented their concepts to potential investors. Asha had prepared a groundbreaking collection entitled Woven Memories, contemporary silhouettes crafted from hand-woven khadi, embellished with subtle embroidery that told stories of India's freedom struggle. "This is revolutionary," Ronit had told her during the final review. "This collection could put us on the international map." The morning of the showcase, Asha woke with a raging fever. "Go to the doctor," Samira insisted. "I'll make sure everything is ready for your presentation." Trusting her friend completely, Asha had gone to the clinic, where she was diagnosed with severe influenza and given strict instructions to rest. She'd called Samira from the doctor's office. "Don't worry about a thing," Samira had assured her. "I'll explain to Ronit and the investors. Your health comes first." What Asha didn't know was that while she lay in her sickbed, Samira was presenting Woven Memories as her own creation. By the time Asha returned to work 3 days later, Samira had been promoted to junior designer, the collection was in production under her name, and Asha was faced with accusations of attempting to steal her friend's work. "I'm disappointed in you, Asha," Ronit had said, his face grave. "Samira showed me your text messages asking her to cover for you while you borrowed concepts from her sketchbook." "What? No, those designs were mine," Samira tell him. But Samira, dressed in a new designer suit, had merely looked at her with practiced sympathy. "I know you're under a lot of pressure, Asha. Perhaps the expectations were too high." Within a week, Asha was terminated, her reputation in tatters. Fashion houses across Mumbai closed their doors to her. In desperation, she had returned to her hometown in Gujarat, where she worked with local artisans, slowly rebuilding her confidence and creativity away from the cutthroat world of high fashion. There she met and eventually married Vikram Mehta, a quiet, brilliant man who had made his fortune in tech but maintained a low profile. Few knew that his company, initially focused on software development, had expanded into venture capital and owned significant stakes in dozens of businesses, including, as of 3 months ago, a controlling interest in Vogue Luminescence. "You should reclaim your place," Vikram had told her after learning her full story. "Not for revenge, but because your vision deserves to be seen." And so, after 15 years of exile, Asha Mehta had returned to Mumbai, not as a supplicant begging for opportunity, but as a designer who had spent a decade and a half perfecting her craft in the real world, away from the artificial bubble of high fashion. What Samira didn't know, as she mockingly introduced Asha to the design team, was that this simple woman was now married to the majority shareholder of the company, and that this diversity hire had come not to beg for inclusion, but to reclaim what had been stolen from her. The annual Fashion Federation Gala was Mumbai's premier industry event, where designers showcased preview pieces from their upcoming collections. Held in the grand ballroom of the Taj Palace Hotel, it was less a formal runway show and more a strategic battlefield where reputations were made and destroyed. 2 weeks into her new position at Vogue Luminescence, Asha found herself relegated to the corners of the design floor, assigned to ethnic accessories that would complement Samira's mainline collection. Her suggestions were routinely dismissed, her sketches accidentally misplaced, her workspace gradually reduced until she was working at what amounted to a side table near the supply closet. "We need something rustic for the tribal-inspired pieces," Neil had told her with thinly veiled condescension. "Perhaps some beads and feathers, whatever you village people use to look festive." Asha had swallowed her pride and continued working, documenting every slight, every dismissal, every stolen idea that somehow made its way into the main collection with someone else's name attached. The night of the gala arrived with the electric anticipation of a gathering storm. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and the flash of photographers' cameras. Designers, celebrities, and industry powerbrokers mingled over champagne, evaluating each other's creations with the merciless precision of generals assessing enemy forces. Asha arrived wearing one of her own designs, a midnight blue silk sari draped innovatively over a structured bodice, embroidered with subtle constellations in silver thread. It was elegant, sophisticated, and unmistakably her work to anyone who had known her designs from before. Oh my, Samira's voice cut through the background chatter as Asha entered. Our little craft project has arrived, and wearing, is that supposed to be fashion? Heads turned, Samira stood at the center of a circle of admirers, resplendent in a cutting-edge architectural gown that Asha recognized immediately as a modified version of one of her own sketches, one that had mysteriously disappeared from her desk last week. I believe it's called cultural heritage, Asha replied evenly, something authentic rather than appropriated. Samira's eyes narrowed dangerously. Careful, darling, remember your position. As what? The designer whose work you've been stealing for 15 years. A hush fell over their immediate vicinity. Samira laughed too loudly. Everyone, meet our diversity project. So creative with her accusations, isn't she? Next, she'll be telling us she invented the sari. Neil appeared at Samira's side, champagne flute in hand. Perhaps we should introduce her to the Heritage Corner. That's where we've displayed the folksier pieces. With mock courtesy, they led Asha to a poorly lit section of the ballroom where traditional craftwork had been relegated, beautiful pieces treated as anthropological curiosities rather than fashion. This is where your contribution is featured, Samira announced loudly enough for nearby journalists to hear. On a mannequin was a garish, overwrought outfit that bore no resemblance to anything Asha had designed, a hodgepodge of stereotypical ethnic elements thrown together without taste or coherence. I didn't design that, Asha stated firmly. Of course you did, Neil insisted, producing a sketch with Asha's forged signature. We have the documentation right here. That's not my signature. Security, Samira called with theatrical concern. Ms. Maida seems to be having some sort of episode. Perhaps the pressure of a real fashion environment is too much for her. A security guard approached uncertainly. I'm not leaving, Asha said calmly. She's been making false accusations, Samira told the guard, claiming credit for my designs. It's sad, really. Mental health issues are so stigmatized in rural communities. Whispers spread through the ballroom. Fashion influencers pulled out phones, capturing the unfolding drama. Asha saw the headlines forming already. Village designer melts down AT elite fashion event. The security guard placed a hand on Asha's elbow. Ma'am, maybe it's better if you take your hand off my wife. The voice was quiet but carried an unmistakable authority. The crowd parted to reveal Vikram Mehta, not in his usual understated attire, but impeccably dressed in a tailored three-piece suit that exuded quiet power. At his side was Ronit Sharma, the original founder of Vogue Luminescence, who had been pushed out by Samira years ago. Samira's smile faltered. Vikram, you're married to her. I am, he confirmed, moving to stand beside Asha. And I believe my wife was about to reveal some interesting information about the provenance of certain designs. The security guard had already backed away. The smartphones were still recording, but now they were pointed at this unexpected confrontation. Samira recovered quickly. How charming. The village girl married rich and now thinks she can buy her way into fashion. I'm afraid talent isn't for sale, darling. No, Asha agreed, her voice steady. It isn't, but apparently in your case it can be stolen. What an entertaining accusation, Samira said with a brittle laugh, her eyes darting to the exits. Perhaps we should continue this discussion privately. I think we've had enough privacy, Asha replied. 15 years of it, in fact. She turned to the assembled crowd, which now included several fashion journalists. My name is Asha Mehta, formerly Asha Raj. 15 years ago, I was an apprentice at Vogue Luminescence, where I created a collection called Woven Memories. That collection launched this brand's international recognition. It was stolen from me by Samira Kapoor while I was ill. Absurd, Samira scoffed. Everyone knows I created that collection. Ronit Sharma stepped forward. Not everyone, Samira. The crowd murmured. Ronit Sharma was a legend in the industry, his integrity unquestioned. Ronit was misled, Asha continued. Shown fabricated evidence that I had stolen the designs when in fact the opposite was true. This is slander, Samira hissed. You have no proof. Vikram removed a tablet from his briefcase and handed it to Asha. Actually, she does. Asha turned to address the room directly. When I create designs, I document my process extensively. It's a habit I developed as a student. She tapped the tablet, and a projector illuminated one wall of the ballroom with images of her original sketchbooks from 15 years ago, page after page of developmental drawings, fabric swatches, and technical notes for what would become the Woven Memories collection. These are my original conceptual sketches dated and witnessed by my professors at NIFT, Asha explained. And here, she swiped to the next image, is the text message Samara claims I sent, asking her to cover for me while I stole her work. The projected image showed the message with a timestamp clearly edited. Beside it appeared forensic analysis confirming the manipulation. Digital forensics has come a long way in 15 years, Vikram noted calmly. Samara's face had gone pale beneath her perfect makeup. This proves nothing. Perhaps not on its own, Asha agreed, but there's more. She turned to Neil Malhotra. Neil, would you show everyone what's in your inside jacket pocket? His hand instinctively moved to protect the pocket. I don't know what you're talking about. The sketch you took from my desk yesterday, Asha clarified, the one that will appear in tomorrow's presentation as your own work. All eyes turned to Neil, who backed away. This is ridiculous. Jacket pocket left side, Asha specified. The blue silk paper I use is quite distinctive. A young assistant designer, emboldened by the unfolding drama, stepped forward and reached toward Neil's jacket. Is it this one, Ms. Mehta, the one he told me to clean up and prepare for his presentation? She held up a folded sheet of blue silk paper. Unfolding it revealed an intricate design clearly in Asha's style. I was just reviewing it, Neil stammered. After removing my signature and adding yours, Asha asked quietly. A fashion journalist pushed to the front of the crowd. Ms. Mehta, are you suggesting that Vogue Luminescence's current creative team has been systematically stealing your designs? Not just mine, Asha replied. Many designers have had their work appropriated. Samara's strategy has always been to hire talented newcomers, isolate them from each other, take their best ideas, and then discard them with their reputations in tatters. Vikram tapped on his tablet and the projection changed to show a grid of faces, young designers who had briefly worked at Vogue Luminescence before disappearing from the industry. We've been conducting interviews for the past 3 months, he explained. The pattern is consistent and documented. A woman stepped out from the crowd, Priya Agarwal, a former designer who had left the industry 5 years ago after a brief, disastrous stint at Vogue Luminescence. She took my collection and claimed I was unstable when I protested, Priya stated clearly. I couldn't fight her, no one would hire me afterward. Then another former designer emerged, and another, each with similar stories of theft and character assassination. Samara's composure finally cracked. This is a conspiracy. Vikram Mehta is using his wealth to destroy me because his village wife couldn't compete in the real world. Actually, Vikram said calmly, I'm using my position as majority shareholder to address systemic ethical violations within a company I now own. The room fell completely silent. Majority shareholder, Samara whispered. As of 3 months ago, Vikram confirmed, the board felt the company's direction needed reassessment. The Fashion Federation Gala had transformed from an industry showcase into what journalists would later call the most dramatic reckoning in fashion history. Guests had abandoned the canapés and champagne to cluster around the impromptu presentation of evidence against Samara Kapoor and her inner circle. This cannot just be about a 15-year-old grudge, a senior editor from Vogue declared skeptically. It isn't, Ronit Sharma confirmed, taking control of the tablet. I've been building this case since I became suspicious of how Samara was producing so many innovative collections after pushing me out of my own company. The projection changed to display a split screen. On the left, original sketches by various designers with dates and signatures. On the right, the final Vogue Luminescence pieces credited to Samara or her close associates. The pattern is unmistakable, Ronit explained. Samara doesn't adapt or draw inspiration, she steals wholesale, making only minor modifications to obscure the origin. Anya Desai, legal counsel for the Fashion Federation, pushed her way forward. If these allegations are true, there are serious intellectual property violations at play. They're more than allegations, Vikram stated. He produced a sealed folder and handed it to her. This contains sworn affidavits from 27 former designers, along with documented evidence of design theft, workplace harassment, and defamation. We've also included forensic accounting reports showing royalties diverted from the original creators. Samara lunged for the folder. This is corporate espionage. He's trying to take over my company. Your company? Ronit asked quietly. I was under the impression I founded Vogue Luminescence. And signed over your shares when you had your breakdown, Samara shot back. You mean when I was hospitalized for poisoning? Ronit responded. Interesting coincidence that it happened right after I began asking questions about the origins of certain designs. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A junior assistant who had been standing nearby stepped forward nervously. I have something to add, she said, voice trembling. She held up her phone. Ms. Kapoor doesn't know, but I've been recording our meetings for the past year because she would blame me for misunderstanding her instructions. She tapped her screen and Samara's voice filled the room. Take Shah's sketches from her desk when she's at lunch. Make sure there's no trace. We'll use the silhouette for the main collection and stick her name on that awful tribal monstrosity. Neil's voice followed. What if she complains? Samara again, then we'll do what we always do. Question her mental health, suggest she's having cultural adjustment issues, and push her out with a ruined reputation. Works every time. Samara's face contorted with rage. She lunged at the assistant, who shrieked and stumbled backwards. Security personnel, real ones, not Samara's private security, intervened. Those recordings were obtained illegally, Samara shouted. Actually, said a distinguished-looking man who stepped forward from the crowd, in Maharashtra, single-party consent recording is permissible when there is reasonable suspicion of illegal activity. I'm Ajay Bakshi, former High Court judge and current board member of Vogue Luminescence. Vikram nodded to him respectfully. Judge Bakshi has been instrumental in our internal investigation. Which has been quite thorough, the judge added, adjusting his glasses. We have server records showing altered timestamps on design files, communications discussing how to appropriate others' work, and financial records indicating royalties diverted from their rightful recipients. Anya Desai, the Fashion Federation legal counsel, had been reviewing the documents in the folder. She looked up, her expression grave. This is extensive. The Federation will need to convene an emergency ethics committee meeting. While you're at it, Asha suggested, you might want to review the winners of the new designer grants for the past decade. You'll find a pattern of promising careers suddenly ending after Samara mentored them. A prominent fashion blogger who had been live-streaming the entire confrontation called out, what about the current collection, the one being previewed tonight? Asha walked calmly to the display where Samara's latest designs were exhibited. These 3 pieces were taken from my sketches, she said, pointing to specific garments. This one was created by Priya Agarwal. This jacket concept came from Arjun Gill, who now drives a taxi because he was blacklisted from the industry. One by one, she identified the true creators of almost every piece in the collection, and one by one, former designers stepped forward to reclaim their work. Samara, seeing her empire crumbling before her eyes, made a final desperate attempt. This is all a misunderstanding. I was